Story 1. I live out in the country on a quiet dirt road surrounded by woods. My nearest neighbor is a 5-minute drive away, so I have always thought of this place as isolated and peaceful. Recently, I have had a couple of unsettling experiences. Twice now, I have seen two different people emerging from the woods and looking into my house. It makes me wonder how many times this has happened without my knowledge. My dog often goes into a barking frenzy at what I assumed was nothing, but now I am not so sure. I am starting to realize I might not be as alone out here as I thought. Story 2. More than 100 years ago, the slaughterhouses in Chicago dumped so much of their waste into the Chicago River that a portion of the river is still bubbling today because piles of rotten meat remain at the bottom. Even more horrible, do not look up what happened to the fat that floated to the top of the river back in the day. Story 3. Our government of Kenya has ordered the police to use real guns and bullets on peaceful protesters. Many young people have been killed. Story 4. Tornadoes. Quite a few years ago, a town was nearly erased from existence, not terribly far from me. Seeing the absolute destruction firsthand is insane. Story 5. I live in suburbia, located in a heavily forested area. Occasionally, I go out into the woods at 1 to 2 a.m. and blow my Aztec death whistle. Story 6. Housing costs, both for rent and purchase, are severely impacting our society. They significantly increase economic inequality and cause substantial stress for many, while others profit greatly. Story 7. Some individuals are spiking people's drinks in downtown bars. A young woman in her 20s was given fentanyl, and the emergency medical technicians administered naloxone. She staggered into the alley and legally died. Her heart stopped, and she fell face first on the pavement. Needless to say, she will never go out alone again. Story 8. Every summer, the mosquitoes here unite, develop a taste for human ankles, and somehow bypass insect repellent as if it were a polite suggestion. Also, landlords. Story 9. Bear, moose, elk, cougar, ticks with Lyme disease, also one of the serial killer capitals of the world. Forgot the major fault lines and a built environment not prepared at all for a serious earthquake. Story 10. The Oregon coast, including Northern California and Washington, and at least as far inland as Portland, will be liquefied by a massive earthquake and tsunami that could occur at any time. Any time, in geological terms, could mean decades, a couple of centuries, or even tomorrow. It is a constant concern during both waking and sleeping hours, never far from the mind. A recent article states there is only a 15% chance of this event happening in the next 50 years. Story 11. Having a drug-addicted stepson living in my house for over 20 years because my wife won't stop babying him. We often argue about getting him out. He has threatened to beat me up a couple of times. He is 43, and I am 67. He has got to go. Story 12. I am in Africa. There are remote areas that contain nothing but radioactive waste from Europe. European companies dump their waste here to comply with European Union regulations. Locals attempted to stop this through a court case, but everyone was bribed, and the practice continues. The train systems are limited. Steel railways are stolen, shipped, and sold to companies in Asia. The government then buys the steel back from those companies. There is widespread corruption and bribery. Story 13. There is a legless, homeless drug addict in my town who gets out of his wheelchair and chases people on his arms. He once chased us up some stairs. He is so fast it is terrifying. Story 14. Giant squid wash up on shore every now and then and are a reminder of what I am potentially kayaking atop. Story 15. Stonefish. They lurk in shallow waters in and around the beaches of northern Australia. Absolutely prehistoric nightmare fuel. Story 16. Cougars. You never want to walk home alone. 46-year-old women are something else, I will tell you. Also, mountain lions. Story 17. Brain-eating amoeba that lives in warm water lakes, rivers, and hot springs. Rare but horrifying because you cannot see it coming. Story 18. 100 degrees, high humidity. Summer has just started. Feels like the earth is cooking. Historically, it is supposed to be 80 to 90 degrees. 90s were considered a heat wave. Story 19. In Belgium, speed pedelecs are the fast ones where the rider is 40 to 50 years old, wearing a black helmet, gloves, and a small plastic shield in front of their eyes, driving at 50 kilometers per hour on bicycle lanes integrated with sidewalks. They enjoy it when you have to jump out of their way. Story 20. A propane storage facility had 3 previous minor explosions. If I ever stop being chronically online on Reddit, you will know the reason. Story 21. 796 babies were dumped in a mass grave. The forced institutionalization of single pregnant women and young mothers occurred. Child sexual abuse has been reported at the highest number in 16 years, according to the Catholic Church's safeguarding body. The Catholic Church destroyed my country. This is not an attack on religion, but that institution is the most horrifying thing that exists in Ireland. Story 22. The scenario involved keeping a pregnant, brain-dead woman on life support because withdrawing care, as her family wanted, would have violated abortion laws. Her child was 8 weeks in the womb when this happened, and they delivered the baby by cesarean section 3 months early. The baby was taken directly to the neonatal intensive care unit. Only after that was the woman allowed to die. Story 23. I nearly tripped over a black widow spider web in my garage the other day. I saw her afterward. She wasn't small either. Maybe I'm lucky that this is the most horrifying thing near me. Black widow spiders probably won't kill an adult, but I don't even like spiders that I know are harmless. Story 24. I'm kind of a night owl, so my summers are plagued by near-nightly house centipede sightings. Those creatures get altogether too big and have way too many legs to be tolerated in the home. People say they are beneficial insects because they keep out other bugs, but they do not, and whatever bugs they catch around here are all far less terrifying than house centipedes. Not to mention that supposed pest control is what allows the centipedes to grow so large. As such, I have a nightly ritual when I enter the bedroom to turn in. I turn on my phone flashlight and stride as quickly as possible through the doorway to a white accent rug, which is the brightest thing in the room and therefore the safest place to stand. I scan the rest of the room with the flashlight thoroughly, every wall, ceiling, corner, and bed surface. This may sound paranoid, but I often spot one of these creatures in the room with me. One time there were 2 within 10 feet of each other, one on the door I had just walked past. If I had been less lucky, it might have leapt onto my back and scurried straight into my ear canal for a venomous bite and egg laying. We hit a new low last week when I saw one on the bed, inches from my sleeping partner. A moment later, it might have entered my partner nostril first. Then, just half an hour ago, I hit another new low when I went to toss something in the bathroom trash and a centipede the size of a ruler scurried from beside the trash can to behind the toilet. The bed and the toilet are exactly the 2 places I fear a centipede lurking most, compelling me to kill them on sight. They may be shy, but every living centipede carries the implicit threat of eventually winding up inside me, controlling me like it is piloting some moist cockpit. The very thought is intolerable. That or reckless drivers. They kill and for nothing. Story 25. Masked kidnappers hired as mercenaries are profiling people based on their physical features and skin color. Story 26. Humans. Seriously, I grew up in Florida, which has plenty of its own horrifying, terrifying, and decent competition for apex predators. I moved to Colorado and learned about moose and elk mountain lions, although only the moose and elk ever concerned me. I stayed in the Southwest for a bit. Camel spiders are pretty scary, and definitely the humans in the remote parts. Drugs, isolation, and a limited breeding pool in those areas make the movie The Hills Have Eyes feel too close to reality. But where we live now, in mid-Missouri, I have seen, watched, and experienced firsthand over the last almost 10 years fascism taking root. It spreads and turns people against each other in a feral way. The hate, the infighting. There is an absolute need among a growing number of people to blame, hate, and destroy their neighbors, their communities, and even themselves and their own children, all in the name of leaders who only worship money. A god they have truly forgotten and reshaped to excuse their own sins and grant permission to harm the stewards and worship the elites. These humans are terrifying, dangerous creatures. A dangerous, terrifying animal acts out of instinct and survival. These individuals are dangerous and terrifying by choice, not for survival but for ego and to avoid personal accountability. Story 27. Someone fell off a waterfall about 20 minutes from my house, and it took a week to recover what remained of his body because he was wedged deep in the rocks underneath. Story 28. How much edible food ends up in the trash compared to the number of people who are hungry? How many people take their own lives due to oppressive identity politics? How unsafe do women feel navigating the world unaccompanied by a man or a firearm? Story 29. A countrywide border wall that is heavily fortified, patrolled, and defended with military troops and bases along its length separates the two countries. The land between them in the border zone is filled with landmines and other hazards. The only reason it exists is because of a ceasefire that has been in effect for the last 72 years. However, this has not stopped multiple missile tests or a constant barrage of propaganda and threats from our northern neighbors. It is somewhat like the wall from Game of Thrones, except instead of White Walkers, it is communists, and instead of dragonglass weapons, it is modern-day firearms and perhaps Korean pop music. Story 30. Lately, there have been numerous kidnappings. Some criminals have been attacking our local seniors, innocent field and farm workers, and sometimes even the fruit vendors in the greater Los Angeles area. We are very concerned. They wear masks and come in groups to steal members of our community. Story 31. The inversion in Salt Lake City, Utah, gets so bad sometimes that you cannot see the mountains anymore. It is concerning that we are constantly breathing that polluted air all winter long. Story 32. 5 minutes away there is an occult estate, or so I thought. I visited it at night when I was around 14 years old, and it was one of the creepiest things I have ever seen. The things I noticed included what appeared to be a sacrificial pool with an emblem embossed in the center and stairs leading into the water. There were braziers surrounding the pool that seemed to be actively used. There was an almost church-like building painted with what looked like runes in black. Inside, there was nothing but strange lighting on the walls and a single brazier in the center. The church was made of rough stone and had no door. There were 3 other creepy buildings that seemed to house farm animals such as chickens, lambs, and goats. The creepiest thing was what looked like a sacrificial altar covered in bones, like chicken legs hanging from strings. It was very strange. I will explain how I came to know who they are. These are some of the nicest people I have ever met. I want to respect their privacy and do not want to portray them as evil. The sacrifice thing is odd, but I do not think anything sinister is happening. At the time, it seemed very weird and scary. I met a member of this group and eventually met almost every member at least once at an event for artists in my city. They recognized me as their close neighbor. Their property is large, over 90 acres, and it borders my parents' land but has no direct entrance. It takes about 5 minutes to drive there. They are extremely wealthy, over $300 million, and very artistic. Essentially, I stumbled upon a giant art project in the woods that also serves as an exhibit for a certain artistic society that I will not name. The barn I thought held sacrificial animals was actually a horse barn. The sacrificial altar was an art project by a horror artist and was cleaned up within a week. Now, it is usually a small area with chairs to sit and enjoy nature. The strange church is just a small art exhibit. The 5 braziers are present because they like them. The pool with the embossed emblem and stairs was designed by the owner as a lawn care project. Later, when I was 22, I was invited back to the house by their daughter, who I dated. As an adult, I saw it was a beautiful property, not a cult at all. I once took acid with her in the church. They are just a bunch of hippies, honestly. I am still upset that things didn't work out with their daughter. They remain very nice to me, and their daughter is now married to a man who owns an animal conservation zoo. I have shared this story with them, and they find it hilarious that I once believed they were involved in something occult. Story 33. The ignorance of people who rarely travel more than 45 minutes from where they grew up, and how their thoughts are based on whatever the religious leader has told them this week. Story 34. There was a large tornado a few days ago that just barely missed my neighborhood. I moved from Georgia to North Dakota and genuinely thought I would be getting away from stormy weather like that, but no. Mother Nature is very angry, which is understandable. Story 35. It's a toss-up between Daniel Patrick and Kenneth Paxton. Edit to add, I am in Texas. We also have wild hogs, alligators, mountain lions, bears, rattlesnakes, and sharks. But Daniel Patrick and Kenneth Paxton. Story 36. I live in a rather rundown neighborhood. It was the only place I could afford to buy. I am pretty sure most of my neighbors are drug dealers. It is their lives and they leave me alone. However, it horrifies me to see the number of children wandering around. They are growing up surrounded by this situation, and I despair for them. The police are around quite often, so the authorities obviously know what is going on. I do not know what the solution is. Story 37. The controversial Friedrich Merz law, which he voted on, states that rape in love relationships and marriage is not a punishable offense. Story 38. The abortion ban that forced a 13-year-old girl to give birth to her rapist's baby and caused the death of a woman so she could give birth to a profoundly disabled child who lived less than a month, among other atrocities. It is insane to me that this is what a significant portion of the population wants and fights for. Just like before, once the number of horrible outcomes like these reaches intolerable levels, the pendulum has no choice but to swing back toward human decency. The Old Testament condones abortions and explains how to perform one on their wives, as described in Numbers chapter 5, verses 20 to 30. Therefore, I do not understand where non-Catholic Christians get their stance. It is not from the Bible, where the armies of God also cut unborn children from the bellies of conquered villagers and dashed their heads against the rocks. How did we get to this point? How unthinking are we that we do not even know or care about what is in the book by which we claim to live our lives? It is a perfect way to waste your entire life and make the lives of those around you worse. Story 39. Mucade are venomous centipedes that hide in shoes, bags, and lockers and deliver one of the most painful bites known to humans. They will not kill you unless you have serious health issues, but it is quite a sight to see a room of my Japanese coworker scatter when one is discovered, and some brave person has to be the one to kill it. I shake out my shoes before putting them on or wear open-toe sandals instead. Story 40. I live 2 hours from Mount St. Helens. It scares me that it could erupt. The lava would most likely not reach this far, but the smoke and fires that could spread would be devastating. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.